Waiting for the clock to say 10:30. 10:30. Nope.
I said 10:30 before that.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to this place of community and fellowship where we know that the energy of each of us is heightened and magnified when added to the energy of each other. The whole is absolutely greater than the sum of its parts. I'm Dave Lloyd. I'm leading the service today, and our worship associate today is Gene Schaefer. Our music is provided by Jamie Pastman. We light our chalice, the symbol of our church and denomination, with these words. Wow. You know them. We light our chalice. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. There's always a lot going on around the church, and you can read all about it in News and Notes, which arrives in your inbox every Friday. If you'd like to receive news and notes, you can go to the church's website, www.hinsdaleunitarian.org, and click on the Connect button at the top of the homepage. Don't miss our plant sale today, downstairs in the Alice Warren room. We have native plants that make homes for pollinators like bees and butterflies, and a collection of herbs, tomatoes, and other edible garden plants. Speaking of gardening, if you have even a corner of your garden or yard that you can give over to native plants, you can sign up for Homegrown National Park. Sign up and put your sticker on the map, and you can go to their website and add your location to the thousands across the state. And check out the catalog for Cafe 152, our fun-filled auction, which is taking place next week. That catalog is on the church's website. And since there's a lot of information that you can't get just from reading a catalog, I wish there was someone here who could tell us more about it. Oh, Nancy, did you have something prepared? Oh, good. That's great.
Ooh, Steve, too. Nancy Kranz here with Susan Mooney and Steve Trout. We're part of the team that's putting together the Club 152 fundraiser. And we're having a great dinner that night catered by Via Bella. And it starts at 6:30 this Friday, so it's coming up. If you haven't checked the catalog, you can find the catalog via the many email blasts and news and notes, the announcements you've seen. I would like to ask if there's anyone here. Well, no, I'm offering lemon heads to the first 4 people who would agree to help volunteer. We still need some setup help on Thursday evening at 7. We need bar. Dave Mrazek is all alone in that right now, and we sure wish he'd have someone to help him. And kitchen help. We sure need people working in the kitchen for cleanup and whatnot. Pam Fodor is taking care of so many things, but of course, we know what she does. She's overloaded, and we don't want to ask her to do everything. So, volunteers, please, if you don't want to stand up now, come to the back table, and yay, Norma, you get a lemon head. And Ron, yay! And you can let me know which yeah, there you go. I have 2 lemon heads left. Okay, well, anyway, if you're too shy to stand up now, come back to the back table, and we'll be happy to take your name as a sign-up. We're looking forward to this event making some money, and we hope that all of you have bought your tickets. They're $20. You can buy them at the back or at the door, hopefully in the back, so that we know how many people are coming for the dinner. And we're looking forward to having a fun evening. So thank you. Anything else, you guys? Great.
Reverend Pam is here today, and I wonder, Reverend Pam, if you could say a few words.
You know, I told them I felt underdressed because I don't have a cape on. Sorry. I just want to say hello and how grateful I am to each and every one of you for your support and your love, and thank you so much for all the cards and all the expressions of love, and just how hard this is going to be saying goodbye to everybody, and how much I've loved being your minister for the past 8 years. And I'm feeling much better. I told a lot of people I think I slept the entire first 3 weeks off. So, and then I'm trying to figure out what to do after that. I'll be preaching next week, and I'll be back for Flower Communion on the 5th, and then I guess we're going to be having our celebration on the 12th after the annual meeting. So we'll all you get to do your civic duty, and then we can all join together and have a big celebration of the wonderful things we've done together, about the great relationships we've had, and I just want to say I have loved being your minister. And that was the other important thing. There's a link in News and Notes, and I think it's going to be on the website. So if you'd like to set up a time to stop in and say hi so we could have a little bit of time to chat, please, there's a whole schedule. And if for some reason clicking on it doesn't work, give me a call, and I can put it in there. So it's been fabulous. It's great seeing everybody this morning. And now we get to listen to Dave and Jean. Yay.
Please rise in body or spirit. Our opening hymn is "It Is Something to Have Wept," which is number 5 in our gray hymnal. The words are on the screen. And now we have a story for all ages. I'll invite all those who are young and young at heart to come on down here, and we can sit around and share a story. Blah, 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 blah. This story is about two heroes of mine named Mary Beniak and Rommel Beniak. The grown-ups might remember Rommel Beniak from a couple of stories I've told here. One with Rommel as a boy who dreamed about being a brave knight, and another about crazy Rommel who played a trick on a rich nobleman. Those were a long time ago. Those stories were made up. This story is the absolute truth. I know, I was there. Rommel and Mary Beniak were my grandparents. Mary and Rommel came to this country from Slovakia, a country far away in Europe. Rommel went to work cutting down trees with an axe in the forest. That's right, my grandfather was a lumberjack. He was okay. Mary moved to a big city and worked for people cleaning houses. Eventually, Rommel moved to the big city and went to work in a steel mill. A steel mill is where they heat up iron ore that they take from the ground in a big furnace until it's so hot that metal melts. And they pour the melted steel from big pots into molds. It's hot, it's dirty, and it's dangerous. And that's what Rommel did for a job. One day, Mary and Rommel met, they got to like each other, they fell in love, and they got married. Rommel made good money at his job. It was a union job, see, with good pay and benefits. And Mary could stay home and raise a family. And they did. They had a bunch of kids, and the kids grew up and got married. And Rommel and Mary had a bunch of grandchildren. So if you kids have your grandparents around, think about how cool it is for them to see you grow up every day. And they don't have to worry about raising you because that's your parents' job. They just get to spoil you. Their children and grandchildren would come to see them at birthdays and holidays, and 3 of their grandchildren actually lived with them. They were not the best to their grandchildren. In fact, they were the rotten ones. I know because I was one of them. Me and my 2 brothers made a lot of trouble for my grandparents, but for some reason they loved us anyway. Well, years and years went by, and Mary and Rommel had been married for 49 years. It was their 49th anniversary. They had a nice house, they had these successful kids and lots of grandchildren, and they could think about how next year would be their 50th anniversary, and they could have a big party, and people would come over, and they could celebrate being married for 50 years. And then what do you suppose happened? What did Rommel and Mary Beniak have happen to them on their 49th anniversary? Can you guess? What do you think happened to those old people? How about the grown-ups? Can anybody here guess? Sue, you don't get to. What happened to Mary and Rommel Beniak on their 49th anniversary? They still lived for years and years. They had a tornado. A tornado came right down their street. The house that was kitty corner from their house was completely wrecked, nothing left. The house across the street, it was still standing. There was a car on top of the street across from Mary and Rommel's house. All their own windows were blown in. Their house wasn't really badly damaged, but they lost all their windows. The school where their 3 grandsons went to school had the whole front of the building torn off. The tornado went by at the speed of a car, not a race car, but a car driving down the street. And when it passed, everything got deadly silent. And what do you suppose Rommel and Mary did then? They got out brooms to sweep up the broken glass. A tornado wrecks their town, and they say, well, that happened, and they sweep up the glass. Mary and Rommel Beniak were not the kind of heroes that fight bad guys or save people in danger, but when everything was swirling around them, literally, they just coolly and calmly got down to business. Those are the kinds of heroes that I like. Now, you're going to get to go over and have some classes and we're going to sing while you're going over. Okie doke? With you always, as you go in as you please. Know our love is with you always, as you go as you go. Let us now take a few moments to settle into our chairs. Put your feet flat on the ground. Take a deep breath, as deep as your lungs can hold. And breathe out as hard and empty as you can do. And then take another breath so you can continue to participate in the service. What was the best thing that happened to you this week? Remember what happened, where you were, who you were with, and how that made you feel. Dive deep into that feeling.
Our first reading is from Bill Bryson's book, A Short History of Nearly Everything. We are so used to the notion of our own inevitability as life's dominant species that it is hard to grasp that we are here only because of timely extraterrestrial bangs and other random flukes. The one thing we have in common with all other living things is that for nearly 4 billion years, our ancestors have managed to slip through a series of closing doors every time we needed them to. Stephen Jay Gould expressed it succinctly in a well-known line: humans are here today because our particular line never fractured, never once at any of the billion points that could have erased us from history. Bill Bryson started this chapter with 3 points. Life wants to be, life doesn't always want to be much, life from time to time goes extinct. To this we may add a 4th, life goes on, and often it goes on in ways that are decidedly amazing.
We enter this space bringing with us joys, concerns, challenges, and blessings. If you have something dancing or weighing on your heart, come up and light a candle and share your feeling, a phrase or a sentence. At home, feel free to post them in the chat section. Remember that we are being broadcast live, so you might want to think about using first names only.
Hi, I'm Kathy Knoll. Last week, Gary fell in a pothole, and what I'm grateful for is that he was not seriously hurt. But, Deus ex machina, within seconds after he fell, a big black car pulled up next to us, and 2 people jumped out, and one of them was an EMT.
Lighting a candle for Jeff's parents separately. Each of them are suffering from health struggles. My father-in-law's in the hospital right now, and my mother-in-law's cancer is out of remission, so please keep them in your thoughts.
Morning, I'm Ron, and I want to invite all of you to concert this evening at the St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Downers Grove. It's the Sounds Good Chorus, and appropriately happy together because we've had to do so much of our work over the last 2 years via Zoom, so now we're in person. We're invited, 7 o'clock, St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Downers Grove, and you'll have a happy time.
Good morning, I'm Jonathan. 2 weeks from now, Memorial Day weekend, I'll be leading my first service here at the Unitarian Church of Hinsdale. I'm very excited about that. Ron will be my associate. My sermon's going to be called The Three Faces of Venus, and it's going to be about an aspect of climate change that doesn't get talked about very often, and particularly something that all of us can do quite easily to make a difference. And as I'm thinking about climate change, I open up the Trib this morning, and what do I see? Armadillos have migrated from Texas and come all the way to southern Illinois.
We light 3 final candles, one for those concerns that might be too tender to share, one for the community of all of us who share with each other our joys and concerns, and one for the wider world and our hope that our leaders remember where they live and who they work for. Now let's sing Spirit of Life.
Our second reading is from The Optimism of Long-Term Planning by Robert Greenler. The retirement community where we live now is blessed with a 9-acre nature preserve containing a mature mixed hardwood forest. Before European settlers moved into this part of the country, periodic fires, started by lightning or sometimes by the indigenous people who lived here, went through the woods and killed many of the tree saplings. Oaks were more fire resistant than other trees, and after they became big enough, they could survive a fire that would kill other species. Without fires, other hardwood trees, maple, elm, cherry, ash, hickory, have moved in, producing a leaf canopy that reduces the amount of sunlight reaching the forest floor. At this point in the process, the light level has become so low that oak seedlings are not able to grow. Without fires, the woods will lose all the oaks and become a community of trees largely dominated by maples. If we continue to interfere with the natural order of things by keeping fire out of the preserve, in 50 years, most of the oaks will disappear. So we decided that if we plant 6 young oaks each year and 5 of them survive, there will be 250 oaks in 50 years, ranging in age from about 3 to 53 years. A number have been planted where we have removed Norway maples, which were imported from Northern Europe to many of our communities. We coupled our removal with the invasive maples with making space for planting native oaks. Sometimes, when I am talking with a person and pass an oak seedling that we have recently planted, I get a resigned response of the sort, well, I'll never live to see that become a tree. And neither will I. But I believe that indulging in the optimism of planting a tree is a good way to live.
Thanks, Gene. We hear all about living in the present. The past is but a memory and the future just a dream. Only the present is real. Today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. But if we live only in the present, if we don't have the past or the future, we lose a large part of our lives. If I lived only in the present, I wouldn't have the memory of my first kiss more than 50 years ago, and I remember it like it was last week. I remember where I was, who was there. I was throwing a ball around with some friends, and a girl I like rode up on her bike with some friends and stopped and talked, and then she was walking up to me and kissing me. I remember what was said. I remember the feeling. And here's a memory from 25 years ago, when I had made a lunch date and we were going to meet at the Art Institute downtown. So I get there and I'm standing on the stairs between the lions and watching people walk by. Michigan Avenue at noon is the best time and place for people watching. And I'm watching this woman across the street. Hey, I'm on a date, but I can still look. And I'm watching this woman, and it turns out she's my date. The prettiest girl on Michigan Avenue. And she's coming to see me. And now that girl's me wife. If you live in the present, you lose all those memories. And you have to plan for the future. I hope to retire in the not-too-distant future, and if I had been living solely in the present all this time, I wouldn't be saving for retirement. I wouldn't have that $367.13 that I have saved up. And if this week I had lived solely in the present, this is what the rest of the sermon would sound like. And here's another reason why living in the present is not all that it's cracked up to be. The present sucks. If by present we mean from March 2020 to today, this sucks. People dying, people isolated, the unknowing whether it's safe or not, the economy in tatters, businesses closed, shortages, inflation. Or if we measure the present from 2016, when monsters took over our government. Racism is just fine. Mocking people on TV is just fine. Attacking the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. is just fine. The court system, captured by ideologues, ready, apparently, to, for the first time that I know of, reverse a decision and actually take freedom away from people. And then in Europe, a rogue state starts a war, invades their neighbor, and kills thousands of people. This is a tough time to be living in the present. I just finished a book titled The Windward Shore by Jerry Dennis. The author takes a winter and stays in borrowed or rented houses all along the shores of Lake Michigan and Lake Superior. From a log cabin to a luxurious mansion, he hunkers down and experiences the ways of nature during the winter and the ways of people when they cope with the cold and snow, and he opens himself up to living a real life. It's a genre that Sue and I called eco-porn. About living in nature, off the grid, cutting down wood for the fire, having squirrels come up on the windowsill and sometimes coming in the house, about moose walking through your front yard. And if you listen close, you can hear the moose and the squirrel communicate with each other. Hey, Rocky, let me spill a rabbit out of my hat. See, if you didn't have the past, that wouldn't be funny. In his book, Jerry Dennis meditates a lot on the nature of time. Here are a few things he says. That we sometimes have too much time on our hands and not enough ways to fill it is difficult to understand. I've never been able to decide which is more strange, the ways of time or our ways of dealing with it. We have so little time to spare, yet we have plenty to waste. We know that every moment is precious, just as we know that we're surrounded by infinite wonders, and that life is brief and all but an incomprehensible interval between mysteries. So why do our days become tedious? Why aren't we astonished every moment of our lives Why aren't we driven to our knees by scalloped snowdrifts, by cat's paws of wind on the water, by every word a child speaks? We're too busy, we work too much. We squander our days rushing to catch up and waste our nights worrying because we can't. Already it's an old story, but just because it's an old story doesn't mean we're condemned to it. This is me talking again. What is time anyway? The author, Jerry Dennis, gives the whole list. It's lineal, say rationalists, a one-way march from oblivion to oblivion. It's an arc, say Christians, from beginning time to ending time. It's cyclical, say the Buddhists. It's a pendulum swing, say Chinese cosmologists. It's both phenomenally real and absolutely unreal, says Kant. It's absolute, said Newton. It's relative, said Einstein. Time is an illusion, said Greek philosophers. Time is money, say bankers and efficiency experts. Time is the faucet that keeps everything from happening at once, say 1960s philosophers. What to do with all this time? We have past, present, and future. How do we use them? The past is a source of pleasant memory and a source of instruction. We remember that first kiss, that date, children being born, people getting married, trips, discoveries. We always have those memories, and they're part of our lives. We can learn from the past. During the pandemic, Sue and I watched a show about the Great Plague, the Black Death from the 1300s. That was part of the Great Courses series. I think we saw it on Amazon Prime. They had made the series in 2019, and then the pandemic came along, and suddenly everybody wanted to watch it. It was one of their most popular series ever. Remember that the Great Plague killed somewhere between a quarter and a third of the whole population of Europe. Imagine in this country if we lost not 1 million people, but 80 million people. Imagine if 1 of every 3 people you knew was dead. The past can give us perspective. It's been a lot worse. One of the points the presenter made in the show was about how people reacted differently to the plague. Some became very religious, very pious. They hoped that by living right, they could seek God's forgiveness and have God lift this terrible plague from them. Other people had the opposite reaction. Since God had forsaken them, they might as well enjoy life. They engaged in all sorts of hedonism, all sorts of sin. Cultural norms broke down in big parts of the continent. Since you were all going to die anyway, you might as well enjoy our last moments. The economy was completely overturned because there were not enough people to tend animals and plant the crops. There had been this system of feudalism where people were tied to the ground. If you weren't a noble, you worked and lived on the same piece of land all your lives, and your children did too. Once there weren't enough people around, the nobles would poach each other for labor, and it went from being tied to the land to making money. The end of feudalism, the end of serfdom, started with the Great Plague. In similar ways, people today have decided, I don't want to do your stupid job for your $10 an hour. And it's a great crisis for the employers, but guess what? Gravy train's over. The other day I read an article about the increase in violent crime. And the author said he was struggling to figure out a cause. Well, duh. We've just been through the most traumatic event in any of our lifetimes. What did you think would happen? In my lifetime, there have been 3 big uptakes in the crime rate, in the 60s, in the 90s, and right now. In the 60s, people thought it was the breakdown of society, drugs and sex and rock and roll, and the loss of societal norms. There was a war on crime. Politicians struggled to come up with a theory and a solution. And later, political scientists figured out that the rise in crime exactly paralleled the rise in the number of young men aged 18 through 25, those who are always more responsible for crime. The cause of the big crime boom was the baby boom. entirely natural, could have been entirely predictable. In the 1990s, the crime wave was created by the invention of crack cocaine. Suddenly, drug-selling gangs found a new source of really high income and had a new and increased reason for fighting over turf. And today, people are reacting to stress, not by becoming more pious, but turning to sin, to crime. It's like those experiments where they put rats in enclosed spaces and subject them to all sorts of stress, and they go mad. If you live only in the present, if you don't refer to the past, you don't know the explanations for what's happening today. And the past gives us reason for optimism. In Steven Pinker's book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, he cites a whole host of statistics that show that, by every measure, our lives are so much better than in the past. The levels of all type of violent crime, murder, rape, robbery, assault, are down, way down from 100, 120, 150 years ago. The occurrence of war is way down from past centuries, when Europe was almost constantly at war, some country always forming an empire and invading its neighbors. Now, one country invades another, and it's an international scandal. Numerous forms of cruelty have faded away. Parents used to routinely beat their children, and husbands beat their wives. Maybe you've seen that post online of ads from the past that they couldn't run today. You know, things that were racist, things that were really inappropriate in a lot of ways. There were ads in magazines 60 years ago or so that referred openly to husbands spanking their wives if they let the housework go. I read the other day that dog racing, as an industry, is on its way out. Cruelty to dogs, we can't permit that anymore. There used to be bear baiting, where they would chain a bear to a post and let dogs loose on him. Some would bet on the bear, and some would bet on the dogs. And it was a great pleasure to see, well, what you can imagine you would see. The death penalty used to involve terrible torture. Cutting somebody's head off was a merciful way to kill him. Now most of the world has utterly rejected killing people for any crime. And even in our country, most states have done away with it. Right now I'm rereading a series of books by Winston Churchill on World War II. Britain stood alone against Nazi Germany for over a year, and during that time cried out to the US for weapons and equipment. Churchill's famous saying was, "Give us the tools and we'll finish the job." Today, when NATO offered to give Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky free passage out of the country, he famously said, "The fight is here. I need ammunition, not a ride." History tells us that President Roosevelt, although the vast majority of Americans wanted nothing to do with another European war, President Roosevelt and a small group of his advisors did everything they could to make sure that Britain had the tools. Ships, planes, tanks, guns, and ammunition to survive, to hold back violent tyranny, to finish the job. And today, when Vladimir Putin's invasion of a peaceful neighbor has gone so terribly wrong for him, can we doubt that the future will be better? That this generation's violent tyrant has been taught a painful lesson and a warning to other would-be conquerors? I suggest that we reflect on the lessons of the past. And one more little thing. For each of us, why not look back, not too far into the past, but just to 2019, to the days before all this. Consult a diary or a calendar or the memories of friends and family members, and remember what life was like when things were normal. Just a few years ago, so close that it's hard to tell whether it's the present or the past, but those days were the normal days. We can call today the new normal, but it's not normal, and it doesn't have to be. Remember the highlights of those days and see what we can do to recreate them. I checked the catalog for next Friday's church auction, and look at all the events that people have planned. Remember when we used to go to people's houses in groups and eat and drink and laugh and have fun? That's what I'm talking about. And here's the use we can make of the future. Plant native plants for homegrown national park. If you plant native plants today, then tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, the native bees and butterflies will have a home and sources of food and room to grow. And the caterpillars that grow on the native plants will feed the native songbirds. Like the reading from Robert Greenler, the guy who maintains the nature reserve near his home, indulge in the optimism of planting a tree. Participate in politics, no matter how painful the monsters have made it. If nothing else, the decision that was leaked by the Supreme Court this past week shows us how important political decisions are. Remember that the biggest fear the powerful elite has is that there are more of us than there are of them, way more of us. And if we get together for the right, we can't be stopped. But you have to do it today for November. You have to do it today for 2 years from now. You have to do it today or next week or the week after for years from now. And importantly, right now, think about the future of this church. We're celebrating 152 years at UCH, and the past has had a lot of great times, great accomplishments. The present is tough. We've come through this pandemic, but with reduced membership. Not because people have bailed on the church, but because any church loses people every year, from older members dying or aging out, other people moving away, and we haven't been able to maintain the momentum in our membership by attracting new people, mostly because of the pandemic. Also, people haven't had the time or wanted to take the risk to get to church and volunteer to do the many things that we like about this church. Some 8 or 9 years ago, when I was on the search team that hired Reverend Pam, some of the applicants said they thought, before they looked at the figures, they thought our church was bigger than it is because we have so much going on and we do so much. We really do seek out things that a larger church should have here at UCH. Right now, we're truly in crisis, financially and facing the task of attracting a new minister and keeping all the things that we like going. It's time for each one of us to protect and improve the future of our church by increasing our financial contribution by however much we can and devoting more time to serving, improving, and enjoying our church community. That's what I'm talking about. And okay, let's not forget living in the present. Throughout this time, I'm not saying we shouldn't live in the present, only that we shouldn't ignore our past and our future. I read an article online by a guy named Joshua Becker. It's 10 tips to start living in the present. And you always have to be suspicious about anything that says 10 tips, because it's probably clickbait, but this one was legitimate, I hope. My computer's on fire right now, who knows? Here are his 10 tips. Remove unneeded possessions. Smile. Fully appreciate the moments of today. Forgive past hurts. Love your job. Okay, that's a tough one. I think the biggest lie told to my generation is that we could love our jobs. Do what you love, follow your passion. Boy, did they sell us a line. I think a much better saying is, do what you hate and get paid well for it. Then you can afford to do what you love. But what Joshua Becker says is, if you don't love your job, if you can, change jobs. And a lot of people have done that recently, right? Or at least find something you appreciate about your current career. My job is hard. I deal with unreasonable people, institutions that are intentionally stupid, technology that is run by imps, But the other day, I closed a case that had been going on for 3 years. And the guy said, "Thank you, Dave, you're the best." And the other day, I got to quote Shakespeare in court. Find things about your job that you love. But I digress. Here are the rest of the 10 tips. Dream about the future, but work hard today, like improving the future for the church or our country or the world. Don't dwell on past accomplishments. Stop worrying. Think about old solutions, or think beyond old solutions to problems. And 10th, conquer addictions, not thus just the obvious ones that we all know about, but also those that involve little screens that light up. It has been a tough couple of years that no one expected and no one was ready for. I think the best way to put those years in the past to prepare for the future and live in the present is to follow the example of those heroes of mine, Mary and Romo Beniak. The present tornadoes through, and in its wake we say, well, that happens. And we pick up our brooms and we sweep up the broken glass. Oh, and by the way, the year after the tornado on their 49th anniversary, Romo and Mary did celebrate their 50th anniversary with all their family and friends, and 2 of their rotten grandsons were altar boys at the service. That was over 50 years ago, and I remember it like it was last week. Enjoy the very near future, the rest of today. The present is the time in our service where we invite each other to share our resources, to continue the work of this church. I think it's about time. If you're at home, you can easily make a contribution by visiting the church website, hinsdaleunitarian.org, and clicking on the donate button. Let's say these words together. This church is made up of all of us. It is what we learn together, the work we do together, the fun we have together. It is what we share with one another, the people around us, and all the world. Thank you in advance for your generosity. Our final hymn is No Longer Forward Nor Behind, number 9 in your gray hymn book. The words are on the screen. Please rise and body your spirit. Sigh the toil
Please join us in these words to extinguish the chalice in your order of service and on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of its truth, the warmth of this community, nor the fire of our commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world.
Before we go, I have just a few photos of, this is past, present, and future. What you're seeing there is all garlic mustard, Alearia petiolata for the scientists. It is an invasive plant. It was brought over here from Europe because it's useful. You can make salad out of the leaves and the roots. But when they bring these plants over, they don't bring the elks and the hedgehogs or whatever it is that eat them and keep them under control. If they like our soil and our climate, they grow out of control and they shade out all the native plants. If you've seen the word monoculture, this is the picture in the encyclopedia next to monoculture. The next is present. Not today, but this is the present day of a work day in the woods. On your left, that's all the garlic mustard that got pulled. That's what it looks like. It's bare dirt. But next spring, there will be a carpet of wildflowers replacing the garlic mustard. On the right, it's still there, so it's left for a future workday. And the future from this date and the present today looks like this. That's Mayapple in the middle, and all the little white are not little baby garlic mustards, but they're spring beauty, toothwort, and any of a number of other native plants that are growing in the woods. Our work today can erase the pain of the past and improve the future. So let's go out and do that.